How do you plan on scaling your business? Any strategies in the pipeline?
One of my biggest learnings in the last 3 years, and I read a nice quote, was in the first 3 years of business, you don't spend your time making money, you spend your time getting good. And especially, for all my sort of experience working in the UAE is if one thing we haven't learned is things move as fast as they can move. And from the outset, from a sort of a commercial point of view, we kind of made the decision to bootstrap the company. So, from almost day one, we had to make sure that we were making profit. I was lucky enough to get a couple of very, very good friends as angel investors to kind of finance the setup of the company. But from then on, it was kind of the company had to be making money. So we didn't really have that privilege or luxury of having a runway where we could spend the first couple of years running at a loss. So we needed to make sure that we were covering costs and we were making money from day one, which was a challenge, but was kind of a thrill of a ride. It was kind of every day was a hustle getting out there, and we had to make sure that we grew to a size where we could support bare minimum, kind of myself and the staff that were involved in the company. So, and then in terms of scaling is where we started. The initial plan was low hanging fruit for us, and the nature of the program. We've predominantly been basing most of our business on after school clubs and ECAs. And there was a very good reason for that. As I said, we were talked about gaps in markets, and obviously working in the football coaching industry. We operate in a very, very saturated market, not specifically to football, but any other sport you can imagine. But as I said, there was always a big gap in foundation stages. So when we were approaching schools in the early days, our focus was the foundation stage, FS1, FS2, year 1, year 2 maybe. So you're looking at your 3 to 6 year olds. And as I said, they were the age groups that traditional academies knew they should be servicing but didn't really want to, because obviously as a 3-year-old, football is pretty much meaningless to me. So as a football coach trying to put football on those age groups, it wasn't really working. So the ECA was a big market for us in our sort of first 2 years or so, in terms of just getting more partnerships with schools. But the nature of our program, as I said, the reason we created the program and how we created the program, and sort of our get into sport product is very agile and very fluid. So we don't necessarily have to compete with traditional academies in terms of the space that we need, and the market that we're focusing on. So a lot of our schools, we find ourselves operating in dance studio type spaces, or kind of foundation resource rooms, that allows us to operate at times a day to our audience of the foundation sort of kids, FS1, FS2. So we don't really conflict with any existing programs going on in the school. So the resistance in getting into schools we found was much less. There was no real conflict in terms of what we were trying to deliver compared to all their existing academies, which allowed us to grow relatively quickly. And then really the rate of growth has predominantly been based on resources available to us, and resources really being coaching staff. And it's it's very, very important to me that we never lost the levels of quality in our delivery. So we could have scaled a lot bigger, a lot quicker, but then I think we run the risk that we were probably working with coaches that potentially weren't good enough, or have the passion in terms of what we wanted to be achieving. So from a business company point of view, I kind of become slightly impatient, but then I also appreciate that we're going to grow as fast as we can grow based on the quality of people that we're employing or working with. We haven't really had the luxury so much so far to be working with full-time staff, purely based on the number of hours that we can be delivering in a day. There's a kind of that golden window of after school activity, and then probably an hour or two after that, especially with our age range. So the business model really doesn't suit so much having a full-time team of staff rather than high-quality casual and part-time staff. Like I said before, I've been lucky enough. I've been here a long time, and I've got some really, really good relationships and network with very, very good people. And so I've kind of relying on those to be delivering our programs. But if we didn't have the staff, I wasn't taking on the new schools. I think our growth in the 3 years we've been operating has been steady. It could have been a lot quicker, but it was more out of choice that we weren't, because I want to build something that's sustainable, but it's only going to be sustainable if we can maintain the quality and what we're delivering and the quality of our product. So plans for scale, plans for growth, obviously. Our business model really is based on volume. It's bums on seats. It's getting kids in sessions. So we're fortunate enough. We've probably worked across 35 plus schools in our existence. We currently work with probably just under 25, and that's really based on maintaining kind of efficiency in our operations. Making sure that we've got enough kids in groups in our sessions to, one, make them commercially viable, and obviously the schools that we work with, there is still potential for growth in those, so that's kind of where we're at. Our main vehicle for growth really in the coming term, and especially for next year, is moving out of the ECA domain and into weekend community programs. So it was kind of our second phase of our sort of business development plan, which on paper we're probably entering into almost 12 months later than hoped, but I think everything there happens for a reason, and I think our learnings from the 3 years that we've been operating has kind of now put us in a nice place to understand the market that we're working in, what our target audience are looking for and want. So that will be our kind of next step then is moving into sort of weekends, Saturday morning, Saturday afternoons, and kind of sort of community out of hour sessions with regards to what we're going to call our mini sports club. So that's an exciting time for the business. So we're hopeful that will allow us to obviously scale our operations very quickly, maintaining that quality.